of rape culture as being this sort of ubiquitous complex of social and cultural beliefs and practices that make it okay for us to excuse or tolerate, sexual aggression and then also sexual violence.
Implicitly or explicitly supports actual rape or sexual assault or the myths of it.
That violence is normal, that boys are normally violent or aggressive.
A system of treating women as objects, that it is acceptable to see women as always sexualized.
If we consider rape culture to mean anything that encourages viewers to identify with an attitude that sees the sexualization and the consuming of the female body as good things, then pretty much any movie you can think of has some acknowledgement of that mindset in it.
It's difficult to actually name any films that don't, sort of celebrate some form of rape culture.
Bros before hoes, right?
Yeah.
I'm the cunt you married.
He made you look desirable, which in your case can't hurt, sweetheart.
Those are her classy sweatpants. They don't say insert here on the ass.
Look, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I forgot you're here.
You think you got what it takes?
I'll tell you what I got. Your wife's pussy on my breath.
This is my bargain, you mewling quim.
It's such a very old historical strip that women are not in charge of our bodies, and that other people need to tell them how to be in them and look in them and what to wear, and if we're not doing those things, then we're othered or marginalized or hurt or slandered or shamed.
How do you critique something like rape culture when so much of popular culture is organized around that in ways that for many people seem more or less natural?
I think there's a long way to go before women on screen are actually represented in a way that accurately reflects and does service to women in the real world.
Thank you for your consideration.
Media says that women's bodies are for use of torture or rape or, somebody else's pleasure, that it isn't something that's mutual, or that it isn't about reciprocity, that it's about a shell, really.
Women are props or, even objectified, certainly, and then treated as props or even worse, as prizes to be won.
I'll tell you what, Peter. You go out there and you win this thing. And when you get home, she'll have to go out with you.
Even when you have very strong women characters, the threat of rape, because we live in a rape culture, the threat of rape is always, there. It's a sort of constant.
In general, I would say that American films still tend to present female bodies as more spectacular than male bodies. Men's bodies are put on display, but to a much lesser extent.
Most of the blockbuster films you see have to do with men beating on each other or shooting each other or throwing each other. So it's all about men and male aggression and good male aggression versus bad male aggression. The women mean, these movies, typically have to be, they're just like the arm candy of one of the men, right? Or maybe they're a supporting role, maybe they're messing with a computer in the background or something, or maybe they can do something, but it's very rare that the woman is the protagonist.
It's interesting, ever since the advent of second wave feminism and then later what was termed girl power in the 90s, there has been a big push towards treating young, attractive female characters as being extremely competent, physically strong, mentally smart, brave in their character, willing and capable of fighting and defending themselves, which is generally a positive thing. What seems a little odd is that films try to play it safe in terms of not turning off an audience. They want to have their cake and eat it too. So the female characters nowadays are often much stronger, smarter, and more capable, and yet they also still have to be beautiful. They still have to have very slender bodies. They have to conform to very traditional standards of what female physical attractiveness means.
Are these films then just representing women who are able to exploit existing social structures without actually doing anything to combat and change them, versus actually attempting to change the system?
You are killing us out there. You don't fit in. Take off that fucking jacket.
This is a good jacket.
Really? Because you look like you're going to set up a table and do their fucking taxes. Take off your jacket.
Oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Your shitty jacket? My
Zip it.
God.
Okay, jacket's off. Okay, jacket's off.
I can't watch whatever process is about to happen. Now unbutton your buttons.
I'm a federal agent.
Yeah, I know, and you look like one.
Oh God.
You think you're going to bump into him and he's not going to think something's up?
Fine. How's that? Is that good? Is that good? Can we go?
I don't know how it's
go?
happening. I think it's getting worse. My fear is that I'm going to put you in a bikini and you'll still look like a fucking bank teller.
Okay, do you have to use that language, do you?
I'm trying to make a point. I'm saying your face and whatever is underneath this shitty outfit is maybe not terrible.
With relatively few exceptions, many of these films are an attempt to show that women can be more or less just like men. Bridesmaids, which is very much a bro comedy along the lines of Old School and The Hangover and stuff like that. It just has female characters, showing that they can be as gross as any male character can be.
Everybody's really sick from that restaurant.
Oh. But it wasn't the restaurant.
Oh, no.
Lillian,
oh, no.
Where are you going?
I need a bathroom.
No.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
No, where are you going? Be careful. What are you doing?
It's happening. No. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. It happened.
Films like The Hangover, Spy, etc., it's not necessarily presented as boys being boys as much as this is what adults find themselves doing. That adults are horny, uncontrollable, drugged out, thoughtless, etc.
Magic mushrooms! I was doing mushrooms since before the fucking internet existed.
Seth Rogen's film Neighbors or American Pie, where this sort of idea that women on college campuses can be won over, that they're the prizes, that whether no matter how goofy you are or what a quote-unquote loser you are, the point of going to college is to get beautiful woman, to have sex with you.
I think one of the more interesting things is within the past 5 or 6 years, the greater presentation of naked male bodies, but in only comedic ways. And so the bodies are placed on display but there's always an attempt to distance the audience from any kind of erotic attachment to those bodies. This sexualized male body is still somehow funny. You don't have that as much regarding the female body. The eroticization of it is generally considered to be more acceptable in a more unfiltered way than the male body is.
Boys have to go digital. Look at that 3D printer go. Look at it go.
That's awesome.
Penis completed.
Now I can go to class. Wow, my dick prints.
There's a film that's considered to be a comedy classic, National Lampoon's Animal House, in which one scene, one of the lead characters goes to a nearby women's college because he's learned that one of the students there recently died. And so he goes to her sorority pretending to be her fiance because he knows that he will eventually be able to charm one of her sorority sisters into pity sex. And it's never questioned this is a right thing to do.
In the late 90s, there was a very popular comedy, popular especially with women audiences and younger, like high school, college audiences, called There's Something About Mary, a comedy in which Cameron Diaz is the subject of attention from several men who seem really obsessed with her, to the point of what actually looks like stalking. It involves watching her windows to see when she's getting undressed.
A movie called The Wedding Crashers, which was supposed to be funny, and they have there's a scene, at least one scene, where Vince Vaughn is tied to a bed by this really cute little Isla Fisher, and it's supposed to be hilarious that he's being forced to have sex with this cute little woman. And the reason that made me think of rape culture is because if it had been reversed and there had been a woman tied to the bed and a man forcing her to have sex, we would know that was a horror movie. You see just gender stereotypes out the wazoo. So like Inside Out came out recently and everybody thought it was so great, but it was completely gendered, and it's, you know, in the emotions, like sadness is female and anger is male. And I realize they probably think they're reflecting our culture, you know, in terms of gender stereotypes, but at the same time they're like teaching a new generation of children that anger is a masculine thing and sadness is a feminine thing.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What is it, woman?
I want to know what you've done to Agent Barton.
I'd say I've expanded his mind.
And once you've won, once you're king of the mountain, what happens to his mind?
Is this love, Agent Romanoff?
Love is for children. I owe him a debt.
You're seeing films that are aimed at young people, not only, but mainly. And so they're not going to have the levels of gruesomeness that we would see in a R-rated adults-only film. But you still see a nod towards rape culture. For example, in The Avengers, written and directed by Joss Whedon, who to some extent is a self-identified feminist. He cares about the empowerment of women. But he's working in a medium, Hollywood film, where the sexual objectification of women is such a tradition, such a guaranteed moneymaker, that even a feminist filmmaker can't entirely throw the elements of the genre out the window. So you have a scene where the Black Widow character, Scarlett Johansson, is introduced. And she's introduced while wearing the proverbial little black dress and strappy high heels. And she's tied to a chair, and a couple of bad guys are trying to intimidate/abuse some information out of her, which includes one moment of forcing her mouth open. And these are cues They're triggers that make the experienced filmgoer recognize, oh, something like assault might be coming, something like rape might be coming. We've got a hot babe in a mini dress strapped to a chair with her mouth wide open. Now, Joss Whedon being Joss Whedon, he completely turns that on its head. Scarlett Johansson beats up both men with a chair strapped to her, which is quite a feat. And her high heels are off for that part, but then he makes a point of foregrounding the high heels that she picks up the floor and carries with her when she leaves. The point being, this woman can kick your ass, but don't forget, she is a hot babe.
Black Widow she's one of the heroes, but she has to be sterilized in order to be a superhero. So she can't be too much like a woman, because if she had a baby, that would be too womanly, and then she wouldn't be, a killing machine.
The Black Widow is certainly one of the most capable members of the Avengers. Very self-assured, very intelligent, very physically capable. Yet the way that they humanize her is to demonstrate that basically she has been physically altered against her will, that they've stripped her ability to have children. And so that does carry over elements of sexual violation.
In the Red Room, where I was trained, where I was raised, they have a graduation ceremony. They sterilize you. It's efficient. One less thing to worry about. The one thing that might matter more than a mission. Makes everything easier. Even killing. You still think you're the only monster on the team?
The Hulk has his own emotional baggage, but he's able to get away from it in ways that Black Widow isn't able to do. Captain America will always be much more self-assured than anyone around him. He's preparing a new team of Avengers. Black Widow is shown still moping about Hulk's disappearance.
As tribute.
In the Hunger Games, which is clearly directed at teens. It's a murderous game. There's a lot of murder in the game, but it's not a very rapey game, right? There's almost no hint of any kind of sexual exploitation. Katniss has these two, she's in this love triangle with these two men, or boys, and both of them are completely chaste, and, maybe they kiss, but there's no hint that one of them would ever try to force himself on Katniss. And so she's being abused by the Capitol, or sort of by other people that are using her for their own purposes, but there's no sexual exploitation in particular. And I think that's great for girls growing up, seeing a powerful female character who's not always afraid that somebody's going to be raping her.
The whole Hunger Games series, and this threat of rape is absent from these films, and more than the depiction of any actual rape, the lack of the threat was very liberating.
Brave was an instance of the movie makers trying to come up with some sort of plot for a female lead that wasn't about getting a boyfriend or a husband, Home was another one that I thought was actually really underappreciated. Or you have actually an African American girl with an alien, space alien, and they're not having a romance. She's looking for her mother. So I think there have been attempts to create different kinds of narratives for female leads that aren't quite as gendered.
The film Divergent, in which the character of Beatrice is being tested by having a hallucination sort of prompted in her brain to see how well she fights against the hallucinatory scenario. And she's being watched by a hostile audience that hold her future in their hands. This is a PG-13 movie. It's about a teenage girl. The film was marketed to include young people, so it's not a gruesome attempted rape. But they do put a hallucination in her head of the character who is her love interest trying to force a sexual act on her and her rebuffing that. The scene is extremely short, only a few seconds long, and she does successfully fight it off. Part of what she's fighting off is not just the character assaulting her, but the sheer spectacle of the scenario. Because there's almost a symbolic act of rape involved when a whole bunch of hostile people are standing around reading your thoughts and watching something that's held up as a spectacle to be looked at, of you being the victim of a sexual assault. In some ways, that scene speaks to how much we expect sexual assault to be a spectacle, how much we expect to see it in any story about a nubile young woman. But Beatrice, and I think the filmmaker's desire in that moment, Beatrice upends that. She does not give the viewers what they want, either the viewers of the film, or more specifically, the viewers who are watching her within the story of the film. She fends off the attempted rape and deprives the judgmental audience of the spectacle they might have been hoping to see. There's also nothing about that scene that hyper-focuses on her body. Even in the few seconds of attempted rape that we see, there are no visual cues that are meant to trigger a sexy desire in the film viewer's eyes, which doesn't mean some people might not find some, but you can see it's not being clearly set up that way.
You have films organized around female characters that market themselves with female performers in ways that you just wouldn't have had even 5-10 years ago.
Maybe my generation has, done something by way of education that your generation or the generation after you can pick up, and then make it so, an 8-year-old today doesn't have to grow up, constantly absorbing or imbibing this threat of rape that otherwise our rape culture makes ubiquitous.
Whether it's social media or film or TV, I think that it's a great avenue to send out messages. So if we're getting these messages about rape culture from the media, then there's really no reason why we can't turn that on its head. I think it's the responsibility of conscious filmmakers and producers and directors to shift that paradigm, to say, this isn't what it has to look like. Can we begin to imagine that? And I think that's where it starts, where we have to begin to see it in ourselves versus saying, well, we live in a rape culture. Okay, well, let's now work ourselves out of that.